We're going to be talking about bootstrapping liquidity, the great flow from the previous discussion. On this panel, we have Symbiotic, we have Echo, and of course, Josh is going to be part of this discussion as well. Tegan, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce. In fact, I guess you weren't prepared. In that case, I'll quickly give a very quick introduction. We have JP, the founder of Echo Protocol. We also have Jordan Sutcliffe, who is the business development lead from Symbiotic. He's on X as JStarCS. And this discussion is going to be hosted by Tegan, who is the ecosystem lead with us here at Supra. Tegan, back to you, man.
Sounds great. Thank you. Yeah, if we want to start this off with also introductions from the panelists, Jordan, do you want to take the mic on that?
Yeah, sure thing. Cheers for having me, guys. I am excited to chat with you. So yeah, as already mentioned, my name's Jordan Sutcliffe. I'm the BD lead at Symbiotic. Been working in the space now for numerous years, mainly focused on ETH staking, but yeah, recently joined Symbiotic to take the mission one step further from just securing Ethereum, but looking to secure anything that wants to be decentralized on chain. So yeah, happy to be here and looking forward for the conversation.
Thank you so much. Very excited also with all the things going on at Symbiotic and the SSNs launching along with it. All right, Echo Protocol, JP, do you want to give a brief intro?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. So I'm JP, I'm the founder of Echo Protocol. We started at Echo Protocol about 4 months ago with the aim to be the first permissionless liquidity layer that helps to bootstrap ecosystem TVL through on-chain bright schemes. At the same time, we are also building our very own abstraction layer, whereby we are actually helping to do LST as a service, whereby we create different SDKs to actually allow assets to be integrated in a productive and healthy manner on different ecosystems. So since we have gone live in August, we already built up our first use case on the Move ecosystem. So we have successfully bridged about 2,000 BTC LRT over to the Aptos ecosystem. So this BTC LRT is the first on the entire Aptos ecosystem. It's actually integrated across all the different DeFi protocols like Tala, Selene, Aries, including our very own Echo lending and protocol itself. Yeah, very glad to be part of this panel and look forward to sharing our thoughts and views on the bootstrapping liquidity within the space.
All right. And I have been informed that our discussion lead is actually here. Tegan, I am substituting you back off, brother. I apologize for that. I have Alex, who is head of growth and strategy at Nucleus. Alex is a University of Pennsylvania alumnus, and he is on X as 0x. Alex, I'm going to hand you the floor. Go ahead and continue with the discussion, please, sir.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Sorry for the confusion. I appreciate everybody's intros, and I think we should just get right into it. I'm interested from Jordan, just starting up Symbiotic restaking marketplace. Do you think you can give us a high level of what restaking means to you guys and how you're building out the infrastructure to be able to provide that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I think about Symbiotic is it's a permissionless shared security framework. The idea here is that we want to allow any protocol, any network, any product or business essentially to build out their optimal decentralized economic security on top of our platform. The goal is pretty simple. We want to make it absolutely unjustifiable for anything to launch in a centralized manner. Why? Because centralization is a systemic risk in our industry right now. We don't want to be in a situation where you can turn off the industry with a flick of a switch. And if we don't decentralize, we end up looking very similar to the Web 2 we've had for the past couple of decades. The goal is very simple. And how do we manage that? We do this by making decentralization as easy, as efficient, and effectively as modular as possible. So Symbiotic in itself is a very thin infrastructure layer that simply enforces the rules that all these different networks set for their own economic security structures. So we have effectively the coordination between stakers, node operators, and networks, and allowing these entities to coordinate in a completely trustless manner enables effectively many use cases for building economic security. So we're working with brand new networks, these networks who need to decentralize from day one. They need to bootstrap their economic security. It's one of the hardest things to do in this ecosystem. And so we're helping them from day one to provide them with a decentralized node operated network with a bunch of TVL that they can use for their protocol security from day one. But we're also working with the other end of the spectrum, where we have some of the most mature protocols out there that have been around for years, like the L2s, for example, where they still have parts of their tech stack which are centralized, and then we can come in and help them decentralize their components in the exact same technology. Yeah, obviously, it's restaking still very much new. It's very much untested in the wild, but there's certainly a lot of hope that it can really push the boundaries and make decentralization the foundation for what everyone builds on, and make centralization kind of a thing of the past in this space.
Fantastic. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think that I agree with you in everything that you said there, honestly. I think that one thing that Symbiotic has come out of the gate swinging with, which is really interesting, is like the permissionlessness aspect of it. Being the first to have like permissionless asset restaking and opening up that pathway for a project like Null Finance to then capitalize on it right from the jump is, I think, like very impactful to the direction of restaking. And I'd be intrigued to hear Echo's like perspective on where they see Bitcoin then like taking over market share in the restaking space and how they plan to enable that as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. So I think from Echo perspective itself, the way we see the whole Bitcoin pre-staking narrative, right, is pretty similar. It's leaning towards like the Ethereum model, whereby firstly is everyone's relying on Babylon for restaking solutions, and second, you will have a lot of LRTs similar to Lido. You see the exact reflection of it in Lorenzo, Soft, Lombard. They are all like upcoming. I think the TVL in the total BTC LRT space is usually about 30 to 40,000. So for Echo itself, of course, given that we are relatively new, we hold about 2,000 out of this 30,000 BTC. But where we really want to come in is on 2 points, right? The first thing is we realize that there's right now a lot of BTC LRT that are going to be integrated within all the different ecosystems. You have guys like Lorenzo Soft, they are trying to integrate their LRT on the EVM side. Eventually, we believe that they will move to Solana, Aptos, Sui, and all the many other L1 and L2s to bootstrap DeFi protocols itself. Doing this, we saw a gap in the market whereby we could essentially build an abstraction layer to actually help with the integrations of these LRTs into these ecosystems, right? Because I think that given the maturity of EVM itself, introducing a new asset can actually be quite challenging, because new asset like a LRT could actually have a domino effect on the ecosystem DeFi, on the DeFi ecosystem itself, if not handled properly. So I think for Echo itself, on this abstraction layer, what we really want to do is to build a healthy and productive asset that can be integrated on these different ecosystems, ensure that there's no liquidation risk, there's no depegging risk, there's no slippage with stuff like that. So I think that's one part of the pie that we're trying to solve. The second is, of course, our permissionless liquidity layer. I think as far as we know, a lot of the TVL that is coming from the BTC LRT, like Soft, Lombard, they are going to different ecosystems. And I think that a lot of it is going through an off-chain manner. So what we really want to do is to instill transparency within the space, whereby instead of going through an off-chain manner, we could actually create a permissionless liquidity layer whereby any ecosystem that wants to bootstrap TVL using BTC is able to actually vote, and as well as bribe through different bribe schemes. We can actually lock these incentives as well as TVL on the smart contract so that everything is transparent and users know that this BTC, what is it collateralized with, instead of having BTC that's locked in different custodies and people are unsure of the risk. So I think what we are trying to really build out is a transparent space within the entire BTC as a liquidity or different ecosystems.
Amazing. And Joshua, like, how are you guys thinking at Supra to integrate restaking and also incorporate these primitives and these assets into things like your proof of efficient liquidity?
Yeah, first of all, I think the pioneering work of these two projects are fascinating. My feedback would be to create a rating system and transparent rating systems. You have on one side permissionless, that's great. We also should have a framework in which you rate each of these assets, in my humble opinion, which include how decentralized is it, how much liquidity is there, how easy is it for that asset, permissionless asset, to be rugged. And then if you guys can be the gold standard in a rating system, I think that's a missing component that I haven't really seen yet, and that should be transparent and debatable and voted upon. But ultimately, if you guys can have that kind of framework to rate these various assets, then I think restaking and such it will create more capital efficiency. Now, Supra we have our distributed compute cartographers, biz dev, marketing, operations, but we also have quants. And I was part of this as well, right? Came up with something called proof of efficient liquidity, not proof of liquidity, but proof of efficient liquidity. And more or less, it's this notion of taking multi assets from various sources that have what's called a high quality score or proven deep liquidity. And what you can do with that is, let's just use the example of liquid stake like Bitcoin or bridge Bitcoin through one of these protocols. Suppose that we're comfortable with the foundational setup. What you can do with that once it's on Supra is you can borrow Supra token from Supra's treasury itself. So Supra is bringing to market this notion. It's going to take step by step to unfold this all, but this notion of network-owned liquidity, aka decentralized treasury, which will ultimately, Supra's foundation and the founding team, we will seed it with assets and make sure there's a revenue stream there. But imagine there's a network-owned treasury. You bring your wrapped Bitcoin to Supra, you borrow against that asset as collateral. You borrow Supra from the treasury against that collateral. And what can you do with Supra? You can stake it into Supra's actual layer one network, multi-service. Now, Supra is designed to be a single token model with probably the most utility of any infrastructure project I've ever seen. What I mean by that is you have layer one smart contract execution, you have Oracle price feeds, you have automation, crushing communication, machine randomness. These are all fee generating and you have to do with a single token. So bottom line is those that take the Bitcoin to Supra, borrow Supra against their collateral from the treasury, they stake it to node operators and they do rev share through block rewards. So that's already one source of yield. Now, Supra is also positioning itself to be what's called an intra layer between layer ones and layer twos of the most popular ecosystems. So we have this notion of further rehypothecating that asset that's staked to issue another synthetic asset called I assets or intralayer assets, or in this case, maybe intralayer BTC, which is tied to the collateral that has been used to borrow the Supra that's staked to the node. To now use this IBTC as a yield bearing asset, perhaps we'll see. We'll talk about that a little bit later, to use in Super DeFi. So now you may have DeFi rewards and you may be earning block rewards. And this dual reward model, I think, is a good instance of things that are only possible with blockchain technologies. It is truly financial engineering innovation. But it'll come with risks. But at least with blockchains, as these other folks had mentioned, you have full transparency, visible. And these guys, I got to hand it to them that they're focused on removing central point failure. And I think it's compelling, but I do think there's a limit to all this. But that's our position.
Amazing. Yeah, I feel like I hear a lot of common strings through efficient proof of liquidity, right? And also like restaking, compounding that yield on top, and then also being concerned about the risks. So I would like turn the question then back onto the different restaking platforms. And this is something that I'm actually pretty curious as well, of like these ratings, et cetera, like Joshua was saying. However, I take a different perspective. I don't think that it's the restaking platform's job to do this rating. I think there's actually like a whole field of service providers within like the restaking ecosystem whose job it will become to rate these and to become like bulk curators of how to allocate to AVSs, et cetera. And then there's like a whole like potential roadmap available here for decentralizing that stack of like service providers, node operators, as well as essentially like decentralizing these like parties allocations to AVSs that would then be providing some sort of service to maybe an L1 like Supra. If not, like at the end of the day, at least their yield is being aggregated onto Supra. So Jordan, back to you. I'm curious what you think the current risks and problems are in restaking, and how you see like the restaking stack decentralizing.
Yeah, sure. Just quickly touching on what Josh has mentioned there about like ranking, like this is absolutely key. And you actually made a good point here where as a restaking platform, we're just middleware, right? We provide the tools for these networks to structure their security. And it's not that we want to leave it all down to these networks. Like when we're, as I said, the space is very new. Like we're trying to help networks and operators and every entity in this ecosystem to understand and get up to speed and figure this stuff out. But there's a lot that needs to go into deciding what that economic security looks like. And so, yeah, the asset composition is absolutely key. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't necessarily think about is that the security of a network is not necessarily going to be dependent on one asset. And what I mean by that is the Supra network, for example, might have a lot of ETH assets on the network, but it also might have a lot of BTC. And so if you had security in just a single denominated asset, then you can cause risks there where the asset that's actually providing that security is not correlated enough with the network it's supposed to be securing. And so this is where, again, the ability to choose those assets and rank those assets and identify which assets should be structuring that security is super key. And this is something which you mentioned curators. They're going to have a very key role in this space. So curators are the risk managers. They're the ones that decide the assets. The rating system is also going to be applied to node operators as well. This ecosystem is going to grow very quickly. There's already a lot of commercial node operators involved, but operators are being spawned every day. And as well as rating assets, we're also going to need to rate node operators as well, because they're another key part of the equation. But yeah, going back to your question, some of the, I guess, did you mention like some of the problems with restaking or some of the current limitations? That was the initial question.
Yeah, I guess because of this, right? Maybe, how do I want to put this? There is this demand for ecosystem correlated security, right? But there's also this idea that AVSs need to make sure that the security that they actually provide is secure. Maybe you want to decentralize out of those risks and slashing risks as well of the underlying. So I guess it's like, how do you package all of this together and address like the risks or the problems that are available and that have yet to be seen approached, which is like integrating these things into ecosystems and like preparing for the different types of scenarios and edge cases that could come up by introducing maybe something like Supra, an asset that is newer to the market, doesn't have like as much of a road track as maybe a stable coin or ETH or BTC into the stack. And then further also dealing with these different parties and decentralizing that risk away as much as you can by spreading it out amongst as many as you can. Or maybe you want to, or maybe you want
Let
to
me jump in here
concentrate
real
it
quick
further.
here. So Doug, you're talking about a couple of different things. You're talking about restaking in the context of like hiding layer for ADSs or active validator services. These folks are talking about restaking tokens for DeFi. And actually, Supra is not talking about restaking Supra yet. That's another conversation for later once we mature. We're talking about having these restaked assets in Supra DeFi to earn these token holders like Bitcoin or Ether holders more yield. Why are people restaking? They're seeking yields, right? Now, so I just want to make that clear that it sounds like we're speaking two different languages here, because you keep on talking about AVSs, whereas these folks are talking about restaking for legacy assets.
I think underlying that, there is some sort of service that has to be provided at all points, or some sort of security that is being provided. That's the whole premise behind restaking and the yield that is provided through it. So those risks socialize to anybody who is earning yield at the end of the day, or at least that's my perspective.
Yeah, they're absolutely. There's two types though. One is to provide like some sort of compute service, and one is to provide like lending and borrowing services in DeFi. So you have to be very conscious of the economic security behind this for both cases. But actually it gets even more complex with AVSs. I'll tell you why. It's because now you have to worry about the underlying asset that's backing the AVS, and you have to worry about the soundness of the AVS. Remember, I don't know if you were here earlier. I think you came late. I was talking about this notion of these protocols it's easy to design safe protocols. It's harder to design live protocols. So I bet you 80% of these ABSs are by folks that don't have enough distributed compute experience, and they're designing something that thinks, oh yeah, economic security is enough for safety. Sure, maybe, but what about, is your protocol, or not your protocol, your project, your algorithm is alive, your AVS is alive, meaning is there central points of failure, will it shut down? Economic security is not enough for all this, because guess what? Safety is easy to prove who did what, because you can cryptographically sign something, and that is very severe. Liveness is it's softer than safety, but it's so important because if there's many applications depending on your AVS and it's not up because it's not designed well enough for uptime. That's what I mean by liveness. It's live, it's uptime. That's the biggest problem with AVSs, is that those folks that are launching AVSs don't know enough about distributed compute. And this is something, just so you know, for example, at Eigenlayer, Dr. Schramm is friends with Dr. Kate, our chief research officer, for years. And yeah, I commented about this maybe 8 months ago. And yeah, he agreed that just because you're using economic security doesn't mean your application, your service is going to be a good service. It just means that you have the incentive to not screw around and slash or do obviously malicious behavior or Byzantine behavior. But people have to also understand that a protocol's liveness is, if it's not safe and live, that liveness failure is considered Byzantine behavior, because we can't tell if they did this on purpose or not. Right. Anyways, that's something that the industry needs to keep their eye on. That if you're going to be restaking assets and then running some additional service on top of that, you have to be conscious of the value and the volatility and soundness of the asset itself. Sure, and there's going to be economic security. Also, the compute service, the very powerful compute service itself, has to be sound, as we have liveness and safety. So that's basically something that most folks are missing right now, and that is going to become obvious very soon. It's probably in 2025 more folks will start to realize that this is a big issue, that economic security is not enough.
Does a decentralized node operator not solve this though? That's the whole point of having. It's not. There's two kind of paths to a restaking solution. There's the economic security, and then there's the decentralized node network, or just the ability to coordinate with ultimately like an infinite number of nodes. Yes, liveness is obviously a massive issue, and I think actually liveness is going to be the main reason why there are slashings to start with. There's obviously going to be there will be accidental slashings, like when this whole ecosystem is still very new. We have systems in place to protect against those, but as systems mature, I think the most common type of slashing will be due to liveness. A node operator goes down and doesn't perform the task it is promised within a certain period of time. But I guess that economic security can protect against that. But then that is also why you have that decentralized network. You could have hundreds of node operators that can step in to fulfill that role should one node go down.
No, yeah, absolutely, Jordan. So the point here, though, is that these folks are not necessarily creating algorithms for the decentralized network that are accounting for that. There's a lot of folks, I hate to say this because I have tremendous respect for the DeFi creative geniuses out there, but they don't necessarily, that doesn't mean they're experts in distributed compute, because they may not actually be running consensus algorithms properly. They're not designing these things. I just pointed out Unichain, for example, and they're brilliant to a course, and yet they're brilliant in their niche, in their vector of the space, not everything. So my point though is a lot of folks are like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this, we're gonna be infrastructure providers, but they're not really running sound algorithms or consensus protocols. Or that, for example, the key point here actually to solve a lot of what things we're talking about is to make sure they have decentralization and a timeout and a rotation. So that if someone, so the way these protocols work is, if like these consensus algorithms work, is that if you time out, you automatically rotate to the new leader. This wasn't spoken about in the Unichain paper at all. They missed that point. And it's like such a fundamental point. That's why I'm like, wow, these guys are missing it. Imagine all the other DeFi developers that are trying to get into infrastructure, they're going to miss it too. So look, bottom line is, I'll say for the restaking, it's a very good primitive to be invented, and it's a good concept. Now, we could say that economic security will eventually weed out the bad protocols. That's true. But there's going to be a lot of slashing if you actually do this. And the other thing is the following. It's flashing for liveness is hard to prove. It's harder to prove than safety, because in safety, you have a cryptographic, someone had double signed. You have cryptographic proofs that someone did something wrong. You guys will find out that liveness is harder to prove. Now, bottom line is that, yes, I think things ultimately will work out, but back to my original statement that both and I see no reason why the application or the protocol, you guys could not do the following, which is a rating system, a transparent rating system for both the quality of the asset that's being restaked as well as the soundness of the algorithms and the ADSs. Why not? Others can also do it. You guys can do more than one thing. Like, we're all about vertical integration. If you have a transparent system, you guys could vertically integrate. Basically, it'll become a competitive advantage if you guys have a very good system for rating the asset as well as the AVS service. Because in the end, let's be honest, it could be transparent. But the average consumer is not going to go through the code, right? And if you guys become kind of bellwether and a decentralized kind of proof of authority, so to speak, right? And I'm saying this is like decentralized governance based, but it's completely transparent. And you have a great framework. It'll become reputation based, and you're making that reputation. Folks will just choose you over the other. My suggestion is you provide this core primitive, great, but why not also provide a framework for the measurement of it, of the underlying asset, as well as the soundness of the services utilizing the asset. And that could be us too. So you guys should rate us and be like, yeah, we like this or we don't like that. And this is your framework, and you'll build your own brand this way, and you'll attract these things. In the end, it's all about trust. And you can garner and build a lot of trust if you guys have a really clear framework and procedure. So that's just my point of view on the restaking world. And I think it's, like I said, blockchain composability creates these new forms of financial engineering that were not possible elsewhere, especially in a permissionless global 24-hour scale. So the future's bright. And I'm really excited to learn more about you guys, and I'm rooting for you. And I'm confident that you guys are going to help create more efficient systems that are going to create value, and then hopefully you guys capture a good amount of that value create.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you just said. What's difficult though is being a completely, even if you did create a ranking system, like, you're going to impact. It's very hard to create that's completely without bias. There's going to be some bias towards some criteria. And we have said that we want to launch a ranking system for operators. But it's like, that's like a long-term goal. Right now, our goal is to just get restaking live, get a feature complete system on mainnet. And one of the core premises of how we've built our protocol is that it is maximally flexible to whatever networks want to do. You can build your slashing mechanism however you want, rewards however you want. The drawback with that is that we are putting onus on the networks, to your point, to almost be the experts here and figure out their own systems. And this is something which I certainly want to improve in the restaking space, where, to your point, we cannot expect networks who have no experience in one, or like even no experience in coding a Solidity smart contract, coding an EVM. Right now, there's a lack of tooling, there's a lack of systems in place to even get networks live. It's something we're working very hard on. And that is just one piece of the puzzle. The second piece is, as you mentioned, about helping them structure their economic security. We are partnered with numerous parties and entities that can help create that economic security structure and help them figure out what is optimal. And again, that economic security structure is not just which assets, it's what to think about in terms of when you structure your slashing, when you structure your node operated network, what are the features that it must have to be safe. And yeah, like I said, it's a completely new space. There's going to be mistakes made by new networks. What is key though is that we have systems in place that can protect against slashings. So we have a mechanism called resolvers on Symbiotic, where I view these as like the training wheels. So each network can implement a resolver. A resolver is basically like a veto committee. And this committee can not just veto slashing, but it can also change the way slashing happens. So it has a lot of control over what happens if a slashing event is triggered. And this resolver can be like an EOA, it could be a multisig, it could even be DAO governance. And these are going to be really key to, as I mentioned, be the training wheels that are in place when networks are new, mistakes will be made. The capital shouldn't be lost from these mistakes. Resolvers can veto these slashings. And as and when we mature as an industry, we can really scale back the power of these resolvers and even remove them altogether when we enter a state that we know is mature enough so that slashings are real or justified. But yeah, to your point,
Yeah,
It's still very new. So lots of pockets.
No, absolutely. Actually, I think it's a very pragmatic approach. Makes a lot of sense. And I'm also very excited to see it mature as quickly as possible. I'm just worried that folks might get hurt, like forgiving the permit. They know now what they do. Situations like they didn't even realize that their protocol going down. Maybe because, for example, a lot of ABSs are Oracle services include cross-chain communication. So anything that a smart contract doesn't natively do, mostly verifiable compute types of scenarios are actually considered oracles. The price sheets, bridges, VRF, automation, these are all typically ABS services, and they're also in the category of oracles. And my worry is that, for example, we put so many resources and got into top academic venues who double blind peer review processes and such. We have really great designs, and I don't expect the average upcoming project to get the insights that we had to grind on for years necessarily. So that's all. I'm just worried that folks might go to market too quickly without all the considerations because they didn't know what they didn't know. And then they create some issue, and the applications that are using their service are down for days or weeks. And as a result, there's actually pretty significant loss potential in economic revenue and such. But yeah, I think these will be growing pains. I totally agree with that. And I am generally I just want to be real clear. I am actually quite bullish and also inspired by the notion of economic efficiency through restaking. But I do think we have to be very careful to make sure we don't take it too far. As Doug was mentioning earlier, what are the concerns about shared economic security? If one protocol gets slashes, does that affect everyone else? So on and so forth. But yeah, there's an open field here. There's a lot to discover. I just hope that the industry at large tries our best to mitigate the amount of growth pains, let's call it that way, to get to where we need to get to. But yeah, I think the work that you guys are doing in your approach is very pragmatic.
I guess we actually answered a lot of the things that I think we were targeting on hitting in this conversation so far. But I think one really good thing to like touch on is if you saw if given what we just discussed, if there was a major success to be had, given like rational expectations of where restaking could be by the end of 2025, what would be like a good change that would increase like the anti-fragility of this system to be like that, the safe haven and like risk-free rate type of package that we want it to be in a way, right? So that we can enable restaking yield on any of these destination chains like Supra in a way that is safe for people and that they don't actually have to think about it. I think that's one of the major concerns here is that a lot of people aren't going to be thinking about it. They're just going to see a yield and they're going to opt into this yield without thinking about the second order effects. If we could do something like the one suggestion was ratings, but then Symbiotic or Jordan said that's a little bit further down the road. Is there a middle ground here that we could expect by the end of 2025 that kind of moves the needle a little bit into the right direction? Do you guys think?
I think we just need to get restaking live. There is zero restaking going on right now, basically. There's not a feature complete system live on mainnet. So there are no risks currently to restaking. And so we just we should be the first to go live on mainnet with a feature complete set. We've got a bunch of networks that will be going live with us, and these will be definitely testing the waters. We just have to get this system going. Like I said, we have guardrails to protect against incorrect penalties to help this ecosystem learn and grow. And in the interim periods, I'm not sure whether Symbiotic or the restaking platforms can ever create a completely like non-subjective rating system. Time will tell whether that is the role we have to play in this space or not. I think ideally, to be honest, we have a third party or multiple third parties that take on these risk managers, and it's already happening. You have the gauntlets of the world, the Chaos Labs, these entities that are risk experts in risk. They are the ones that are stepping forward and are going to be like the first curators. They're going to be the first risk managers of the space. And maybe 1, 2, or 3 or more of those create ranking systems that can be used. They can be the Moody's, the rating agencies, the S&P, the Fitches of this industry. So yeah, notice it's not the companies or the exchanges themselves that create these rankings in a lot of situations. So having trusted third parties that are the experts, that's probably going to be what's happened. That's definitely what's going to happen in 2025.
I don't agree. I'm sorry. I'll tell you why.
I don't agree with what, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to say I love this conversation. You guys are clearly brilliant. I have to say, though, I don't agree with the following, which is using a third-party service is going to be unopinionated. So no matter what, we have to solve like a transparent governance process and voting process and framework that can be altered in a very transparent manner. Otherwise, we do start to get opinions involved. I would suggest getting those parties involved in a framework that you guys designed that's open source, open view, open participation. Now, the other problem here is that this is really expensive. I've spoken to them, and 99% of the projects that are launching ABSs will not be able to afford that. So and that's why I think just doing an open manner is probably better. The framework is, it's not as hard as it sounds in terms of, I really think you guys are another group that are going to provide restaking can easily do this by crowdsourcing. You guys create the decentralized, let's call it, well, I don't want to say forum, but like some sort of process. You just create the framework and you build it into your product. And as you mentioned earlier, folks may just, or Duck mentioned this, so choose this highest APY and just go for it. But I think that'll start to change over time because I think we need to have, these frameworks around this. But I'm just suggesting to you, Jordan, honestly, is that I believe you guys could do it. That's it. I'm just saying that don't be shut out to it. I think you guys could actually do it. I know that also, you guys are a growing startup and you guys are growing fast. And it's a matter of allocation and focus, allocation, attention, and the resources. I'm just suggesting, man, if you guys, and by the way, Supra as an organization would love to contribute to that on just a very objective framework in terms of like this notion of Nakamoto coefficient, things like that. I think we can contribute. So if you guys move in this direction, let us know. We would love to collaborate with you.
Can you actually, could talk about like how they would open source it a little bit more?
Sure. Okay, there's a variety of kinds of decentralized governance out there. You could say there's one approach is, okay, I think this is a framework and I'll put my money where my mouth is and stake it. And you could say, oh yeah, there's a lot of stake that's saying that this is the right framework and that's one way. So you can build a reputation, but based off of actual economic value, a mixture of polymark teammates. I don't know. I'm just literally, this is not my focus, but I'll go just brainstorm with you guys out loud. In terms of framework, you could say, here's a framework and then let people refining and then let people vote on it. That's another approach. These things are like the types of things you would measure is, okay, how many individual agents or participants need to collude to cause a problem? So it's actually a lot of these kind of cryptoeconomic distributed systems are actually very much, in my humble opinion. So you need to have.
It could be like futarchy, determined through futarchy, perhaps.
Yes, and that's actually a very interesting approach too. I don't understand that as well. That is, I'll tell you this much. For me, I think the next frontier is actually getting decentralized governance. It's really difficult to get right. And I'm not going to pretend I know the answer. But these experiments, and it's way harder than it seems. That's what I'll say. But I think these experiments, Futurarchy and others, are very compelling. And some combination in between, like a polymarket type of betting toward, or Futurarchy and others, something's going to emerge that none of us could have even imagined that it's going to be highly effective. So what I'm trying to suggest is, and by the way, that has a primitive would be useful for so many things. So anyways, if you guys get deeper into it, please let me know.
Yeah, definitely shout out to my close friends at like ButterDAO who are working on this a lot. They recently got like a grant from Uniswap to actually like delve into it to try and minimize token holder voting and make Uniswap governance a little bit more automated via futarchy. So I think like a lot of these things are actually underway in the governance realm to contribute to these types of restaking activities. And I firmly believe, like you said, that they actually do go hand in hand together. Because at the end of the day, like an attestation or whatever it is that like you're having an AV, like any type of service do, or like everything that we just covered, right? It all comes down to decision making at the end of the day. Whether or not something is good or bad ultimately comes down to what the collective thought is. So I do believe that those mechanisms are very great for this type of stuff. But with that, are there any closing remarks or do we take questions from the audience? I don't know. What do you guys want to sound off? Give one last hot take, perhaps?
I'll just mention that I think the work that you guys are doing is you guys are paving new types of capital efficient primitives. And this is, no one actually knows how this is going to evolve. I just want to urge everyone to side on the a little bit less degen or a little bit more safety and liveness. But yeah, I have tremendous respect for Symbiotic, Echo, Duck, and anyone that's working in excelling what's possible through DeFi that you cannot get in TradFi. And also human coordination games through governance and such. I think it's really brilliant work, and I would love to keep on paying attention to your evolutions.
Yeah, I appreciate the sentiment. Yeah, I guess from my side, let's just not lose focus of the vision here. Whatever we are building as you said, like a brand new ecosystem. It is already better than what we've had to put up with for the past couple of decades, but there is still way more we can do. The space has centralization issues all over the place, and I'm pretty confident that we can all work together to create a decentralized framework that can, as I said, be the default, be that foundation that everyone builds on. And whether that has ratings built into it or have trusted third parties that can do this rating, I don't want to say it's irrelevant. It's obviously an important factor, but yeah, nobody knows how this is going to look in 10 years' time. What I do know is that 2025 will bring feature complete restaking live on mainnet. Lessons will be learned. Hopefully yield will be earned. And yeah, we can all keep iterating and making the space safe together.
Yeah, I think just to add on Echo and I think for us, we will probably see the rise of BTC LRT getting integrated a lot more deeper and into different DeFi protocols. So for us as a secure abstraction layer for BTC LRT, we hope to be able to integrate these assets in a very safe and productive manner so that it won't run into any bad debts or because I believe that every DeFi protocol will be very aggressively affecting these assets for obviously TVL boost, right? But we hope to do it in a very secure manner through our abstraction layer.
Yeah, cheers. I couldn't have asked for a better discussion to moderate tonight, guys. I really appreciate your time. And I do think that this space is going to be growing a lot over the next year as well. I think we're only scratching the tip of the iceberg. Excited to see what everybody is out there building. Definitely reach out if you guys want to talk more about this type of stuff, or if you want connections to any like people building in this space. Because I think like the way we get to a better tomorrow is just by having these types of conversations. So certainly open for that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Duckworth. Appreciate you handling the panel there. That was a really intriguing one and a lot of ideas coming forward as well. So thank you, man. Really appreciate your time. Love what you guys are doing at Nucleus and at Ion as well. And I'm looking forward to working with you and chatting further in the future. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night.
Yep, you too. Thanks. Thanks so much as well to our panelists. That was really intriguing. So all of you guys from Symbiotic, from Echo, Jordan, what you guys are doing is really awesome. And it's now time to move on